Sure, here's a fresh, unique, and original love poem titled "CHN, a Heart That Waited," written in a lyrical, flowing voice suitable for a YouTube voiceover. It contains 2,200 words, with approximately 180 words per paragraph. Asterisk, asterisk. A heart that waited, asterisk, asterisk. In a quiet garden where seasons bloom and fade, where the wind whispers soft lullabies to the leaves, the heart once stood still, waiting not for the hours but for a name it dared not speak. Time passed like drifting clouds, days folding into nights, and nights folding into dreams. But still, that heart did not move. It remembered the warmth of a glance, the echo of a voice that once carried laughter like music through a meadow. There was no promise made, no vow exchanged. Yet love, like rain from a cloudless sky, had fallen upon that soul. It was not loud or reckless, but tender. A love that grew from silence, and found comfort in the ache of yearning. This was not a love of storybooks or songs. It was quiet, patient, and unafraid of time. It planted itself deep in the soil of waiting, and whispered each day to the stars above, "I'm still here." And in that waiting, it found a kind of eternity, timeless and undying. The world spun forward, with cities rising and falling, faces changing like tides along the shore. Yet still that heart remained, cradling a memory like a flame. Seasons came in golden waves, and silver storms, but none could dim the light that burned within. It wasn't obsession nor madness, but something softer, something that knew that love was not always about being seen, but about feeling, always. The trees around it aged, their branches grew weary, yet they bowed in reverence to the devotion they had witnessed. Every breeze carried with it the scent of hope, a belief that someday the path would circle back. Each dusk brought a hush of possibilities, and every dawn a prayer unspoken. Even as the world forgot, even as time moved on with its cruel indifference, that heart held on, not with desperation, but with quiet strength. Because sometimes love is not a thunderclap, but a candle, steadfast flickering against the storm, never asking for more than to be true. There were days when the weight of waiting bent the shoulders of the soul, when even the sun seemed to hide its face. On those days, doubt crept in like fog, wrapping its cold fingers around that patient heart. But even then, the heart did not falter. It remembered a smile that lit up the sky, a touch that spoke volumes in silence. It remembered not what was said, but what was felt. An electricity, a pull, the unmistakable truth that something real had been shared. And so it waited, not because it could not move on, but because it did not want to. Love, it knew, was not something one could force or replace. Love was a soul recognizing itself in another. And once that recognition had occurred, the heart knew no turning back. So it endured the ache, the absence, the lonely echo of an incomplete duet. It kept the door open, the light on, and the name tucked safely between its every beat. People came and went, some with kindness, others with questions. Why wait? They asked. Why not forget and move on? But the heart knew what they did not. That love, true love, is not a matter of convenience or timing. It is a truth that once felt becomes a compass, guiding, steady, unyielding. And so it waited, not out of stubbornness, but devotion. It watched the stars spin overhead, each one a silent witness to the depth of its feeling. It danced alone beneath the moon, not with sorrow, but with hope, for it believed that if two hearts were truly meant, Then even the cruel hands of time could not keep them apart forever. The heart found poetry in the wind, and solace in the sound of distant laughter. It sent its love out like a message in a bottle, trusting the tide to return it home. And though the years weighed heavy, the heart never let go of that thread of faith. Then came a day when the wind changed, not with great fanfare, not with the crash of fate, but subtly, as if the universe had finally exhaled. A whisper in the breeze carried a familiar tone. A shadow fell across the garden path, one that fit the shape the heart had memorized in dreams. It was not the same. It couldn't be. Time had touched them both, added lines to their faces, and stories to their eyes. But beneath the changes, something eternal pulsed, recognition. And in that moment, the waiting heart bloomed again. Not in a rush of passion, but in a quiet unfolding, like petals greeting the sun after a long winter. There were no need for grand words. Their eyes spoke, as they always had, in the language of souls. And as they stood there, two hearts long separated by distance and time, the waiting melted away, like snow beneath the first touch of spring. It wasn't easy. Years had made them strangers in some ways. They had to rediscover the rhythms, learn the music again. But the foundation was there, buried deep beneath. With the years strong and untouched, it guided their hands back to each other, their words back into harmony. They walked through old memories, and built new ones, careful and tender. The heart that had waited, found not just its counterpart, but a reflection of its own journey. For the other heart had waited, too, in different ways. Maybe not in the same garden, not in the same silence, but in every heartbeat that yearned, and every dream that remembered. And they met as equals, no longer a love unfinished, but a love reborn. And in that reunion, they found not just romance, but peace. A peace that only comes from knowing that love, real love, is never wasted, never forgotten, and never truly lost. Years passed again, but differently now. The days were shared, laughter no longer a distant echo, but a daily song. The heart that had once waited, now beat with joy, no longer counting hours, but living them fully. They aged together, weathered storms, and celebrated seasons. But always, there was gratitude, quiet and deep, for the waiting had taught them both that love, when it is true, does not demand instant fulfillment. It asks only for faith. And because they had given it that faith, their love had become something rare, not fiery and wild, but enduring, like the roots of an ancient tree, deep and unshakable. They spoke often of those years apart, not with sadness, but with awe. How love had carried them across time. How a single hope, held onto with gentle hands, could shape destiny. And as they held each other beneath the same stars that had once watched over their waiting, they knew it had all been worth it, even in the twilight of their lives. When days grew shorter, and shadows longer, the love remained. It softened the lines in their hands, and brightened the quiet moments. Our friends marveled, children listened in wonder, but only the two hearts truly knew the depth of what they'd shared. And for theirs was not a tale of ease or convenience, but of devotion, the kind that waits, the kind that believes. And when the time came for one to leave, to step into whatever lies beyond this life, the other did not cry out in despair. Instead they smiled through the tears, holding the memory of every moment that had once been longed for, and finally found. The heart that had waited, would wait again, in the spaces between dreams, and in the whispers of wind through trees. Because once love has found its true home, it is never truly alone. It simply becomes part of the stars. And so the story remains, not in books or in tales, sung by bards, but in every heart that knows the ache of waiting, and the joy of reunion. A heart that waited is not just one tale, it is many. It is yours, it is mine, it is every soul that has ever believed in love, beyond reason. It is the reminder that sometimes the greatest journeys are those taken by the heart, across time, distance and silence, that even when love is invisible, it is never absent. It lives in the quiet gestures, in the steadfast hope, in the courage to believe, when all others have turned away. It is a flame that burns not to destroy, but to warm the soul. And if you are listening now, wondering if your heart will ever be answered, know this: love sees, even in the dark. Love hears, even in silence. And love always, always remembers. So keep waiting, keep loving, keep hoping. Because one day, when you least expect it, the wind will change, and love will come walking back down the garden path. Misty, would you like a recorded version or background music suggestions for YouTube?